The shocking cost of goodness. Machiavelli's hidden truth. You were the one who showed up. When it mattered, when it didn't. When everyone else had something better to do, you were still there. And at some point, that became your whole identity. The dependable one. The kind one. The one who never makes it complicated. Nobody told you that identity had a price tag. Look, we're told from a young age that goodness is its own reward. That if you're honest, helpful, patient, giving, life eventually balances the scales. Good things come to good people. The universe corrects. Except it doesn't always work that way. Does it? And somewhere in the back of your mind, you've felt that. Not loudly. Just this quiet, persistent feeling that something isn't adding up. That the more you give, the more gets expected. That your kindness somehow turned into someone else's budget. That being the good one is exhausting in a way you weren't warned about. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. 500 years ago, a man named Niccolò Machiavelli wrote something that got him labeled as evil for centuries. People read The Prince and thought they were reading a manual for tyrants. They weren't. They were reading an autopsy. An autopsy of good people, moral, principled, genuinely decent people who kept losing to those who weren't. Machiavelli wasn't celebrating cruelty. He was documenting its survival rate. And the uncomfortable part? He was right. Here's what nobody explains about goodness. Being good requires consistency. You can't be kind on Tuesdays and ruthless on Thursdays. Goodness, by its nature, is predictable. You show up. You follow through. You don't retaliate. You absorb. And predictability in a social environment is exploitable. That's not cynicism. That's just how systems work. The moment someone figures out that you'll always say yes, the ask gets bigger. The moment someone figures out that you won't push back, the boundary moves. Not dramatically, slowly, incrementally, just enough that you don't notice until you're miles from where you started. You felt it. You just didn't name it. Think about the people in your life who've taken the most from you. Chances are they didn't take it violently. They didn't demand it. They just kept asking. And you kept saying yes. Because that's what you do. Because saying no felt wrong. Because being good meant being available. That's the mechanism, not malice, math. Every time you absorbed something that cost you time, energy, emotional bandwidth, and didn't push back, you sent a signal. The signal wasn't, I'm being generous. The signal was, this is available. And people, consciously or not, update based on what's available. That's not support you were giving. That was training. Actually, let me rephrase that, because it's darker than it sounds. It's not just that people learned they could ask more. It's that they learned they could ask more at no cost. No friction, no consequence, no discomfort on their end. Machiavelli's core observation, the one that made everyone uncomfortable, was that virtue, when it's unconditional, removes the friction that keeps people honest. If there's no cost to taking advantage of a good person, some people will. Not because they're monsters. Because the incentive structure says they can. Your goodness wasn't just taken for granted, it was priced in. Here's where it gets personal. And genuinely personal. Not in the reflect on this way. In the this is probably already happening way. There are people in your life right now who have mapped you. They know how far they can push. They know what language gets you to comply. They know that if they look overwhelmed, you'll take over. They know that if they express disappointment, you'll apologize. They know you won't blow things up over it. And here's the thing. They might not even know they know this. It doesn't have to be calculated to be consistent. But the pattern is there. And you've felt it. That moment where you agree to something and there's this small voice saying, again. That moment where you're doing something for someone and you realize you're not doing it because you want to. You're doing it because not doing it feels wrong. That's not generosity anymore. That's a loop. Machiavelli watched ruler after ruler fail, not because they were incompetent, but because their goodness was unconditional. They kept their word even when others didn't. They stayed generous even when it was being exploited. They refused to become what they were fighting. And they lost. Repeatedly. Not because goodness is weak, because unconditional goodness in a conditional world is a structural disadvantage. The people who survived, and Machiavelli was clear about this, weren't the ones who abandoned their values. They were the ones who understood that goodness without discernment isn't virtue. It's exposure. And that's the trap. The actual trap. Not that you're too good, but that your goodness has become someone else's guarantee. They don't wonder if you'll show up. They know you will. They don't worry about how you'll react. They've already calculated it. They don't think about what this costs you. Why would they? You've never made them. And now, here's the brutal part. If you stop, you become the problem. You pull back after years of giving, and suddenly you're different. You set a boundary, and suddenly you're cold. You say no once, and it registers as betrayal, because you trained them too. You didn't mean to. But you ran a system that ran smoothly, and now deviation from that system reads as malfunction. Machiavelli knew this. He called it the cost of the perceived good identity. Once the perception sets, the expectation follows. And expectations, when broken, create resentment. So you keep giving. Not because you want to, because stopping has its own consequences now. That's not generosity. That's captivity with better lighting. Anyway, there's a reason Machiavelli's work survived centuries, while the be good and good things will follow philosophy mostly produces burnout. It's not that he was right about everything. It's that he was honest about something people refuse to say out loud. Goodness, when performed without awareness, doesn't protect you. It invites extraction. The people who actually held onto their values long-term, in power, in relationships, in any structure with real stakes, weren't the ones who gave the most. They were the ones who gave with intention, who knew when to hold, who understood that being a good person doesn't require being available to everyone at all times for whatever they need. That distinction sounds small. It isn't. Correction. It's not even a distinction most people make consciously. It's a reflex. You've been good for so long that pulling back even slightly feels like betraying yourself. Like if you're not the helpful one, the reliable one, the one who holds things together, then who are you? And that question, that specific question, is where the real cost lives. Not in the time you gave. Not in the energy you spent, in the identity you built around never saying no. Because now, good person and available person have merged somewhere in your mind. And anyone who challenges one feels like they're attacking the other. That's what Machiavelli was trying to say. And what 5 centuries of he was evil commentary tried to bury. Being genuinely good requires knowing when your goodness is being used against you. It requires the discernment to give when it matters and withhold when it's being taken. It requires understanding that unconditional virtue in a conditional world isn't moral superiority. It's just a slow drain. So here's where you sit with this. Not change everything. Not trust no one. You already know that's not the point. The point is simpler and harder. You already know which relationships feel like giving and which feel like bleeding. You already sense the difference between someone who's grateful and someone who's just expecting. You've felt it. maybe for years. The question isn't whether you're a good person. You are. The question is, who decided that being good meant absorbing everything? Who told you that was the price? Because that wasn't a rule you chose. That was a rule someone taught you. And somewhere along the way you stopped questioning